Well, thank you so much, Kiara, for the introduction. And also thank you to my team. And I'll tell you why I call them my team. We're teammates, and you'll know why. Just want to give you a little bit of background here about CSA Revolution. This is just a continuation for those of you who have been following us, following the FICSA team, the FDA-Industry CSA team. That is Ken and Samantha are part of it, and myself, and then of course our friends, Shayna and Rachel. And our topic today is applying CSA concept to data integrity, updates on ISPE GAMP Good Practice Guide. And if I move this a little bit here so I can read, and CSA Appendix. So CSA Appendix, we'll talk about it as to what it is and why ISPE is partnering with the FICSA team to have come up with that CSA Appendix. So again, this is season 2. For those of you who watch Netflix, this is episode 1, and there will be more. With season 1, we did about 6 episodes, but of course, just like Schitt's Creeks and others, it takes a long time for us to develop this. So the next one will be sometime in January, and you'll see toward the end we will be hosting 2 FDA deputies that will help us understand more about data integrity and also CSA. Here's my team, and I love this team. Why? Because of so many different things. The way we all crashed together, thanks to Shayna Kenny, who really introduced us pretty much to the ISPE GAMP, where actually we got the attention of ISPE GAMP. Oh, these are the CSA guys. Let's bring them in. Let's work together. So it's been really a pleasure, Shayna, and thank you for that. Thank you for believing in CSA and adopting CSA. This is a great thing. And for those of you, because I saw there's a lot of new participants joining, so you may not know what CSA is, and I will show you how you can connect and learn more about CSA, because we're not going to be talking too much about CSA, and we're not going to be talking too much about Alcoa today. Right? The assumption that you folks understand Alcoa, right? And CSA, I would like you to watch all the webinars that we've been doing. Just like we suffered, I want you to suffer. I'm just kidding. It's not about that. So let me go back to our team. So we met and we presented with Shayna for the first time in Boston, was it, Shayna?
Yeah, it was in Boston, yep.
Yes, we met. And I think that was the tip of the iceberg where we joined the ISP committee. And then following that, we met with Kevin Martin from Azure, who's also our partner in crime. So that's the 6 of us who put together the CSA Appendix. And we all came up with ideas to really put together a great CSA Appendix translating the FDA draft guidance that is not released yet. But we came up with better ideas, very progressive. Thank you, Ken. And we put it out there for you, for the industry, to really get better at validation and computer system validation and streamline and stay away from the excessive documentation. So again, a big thanks to this team. Here's some of the CSA Revolution series that we've done with the FICSA team. And I'll tell you in a minute who that FICSA team is, but these are some of the webinars that we've done together with everyone, with various of our partners, clients, and friends. Johnson & Johnson, Gilead, Fresenius, Medtronic, and so forth. So please feel free to click on any of those. The kickoff for that season 1 was with Cisco Vicente from the FDA when we talked about the game changer. Please listen to that. You're going to get a lot of information. One more tidbits here. Compliance group put together a white paper about CSA. It's really kind of a step-by-step to walk you through to make you start thinking about how to implement CSA. All right, let's start with the agenda here. So the agenda, we're going to meet the FDA-Industry CSA team. We'll show you that. You met already the friends. Draft guidance about CSA and Manufacturing Operation and Quality System. This is the actual CSA draft guidance. We'll talk a little bit about it and about its release. ISPE Practice Guide. This is really what we're kind of here today to talk to you about the actual the guide, the data integrity by design sneak preview. And I'm going to give you much information. We want you to go to the ISPE and purchase that, of course, but we're here to promote it, but really mainly to promote the CSA Appendix that you can apply to your current data integrity practices. Panel discussion, this is going to be a very informal one. We're going to talk, we're going to joke, we might bring up some stories from the bars, but the idea is to really give you what you need to know about data integrity and CSA. We'll open it up for questions. Objectives. Please start thinking about when you want to implement, not if, okay? It's a matter of a when. Everyone you see on the screen here have implemented CSA and they're happy with it and they've seen the value. Get your copy of CSA Appendix within the GPG data integrity. Digitize your current paper process. Please, if you're still on paper, if you're still hybrid, get off of that, all right? You'll do yourself a favor and anyone who defends any inspection or audits by automating your current practices. And finally, no need to wait for the draft guidance because the CSA Appendix can definitely help and give you a big window to what CSA is all about. So, you know the story with ISPE GAMP, and I'm going to leave this on the screen here so you can read it. I'm not going to skip it. But the idea is, and I really want to start with Shana. Shana, you were one of the early adopters for CSA. And of course, thank you for connecting us to all of this. Can you briefly just share with us your CSA implementation experience at Virginia's Bio, and specifically, if there's any specific examples on data integrity, please just go ahead and address it.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been involved with ISPE for a number of years, especially with the GAMP Americas committee. So I was happy to get the two teams together. Implementing CSA at Regenix Bio has been a whole team approach. Like we made sure that we had key folks across the company, including QA, engineering, IT, validation, key stakeholders, made sure that everybody was in alignment that we needed a different way to approach validation as a whole. So not only have we implemented CSA, we're also implementing a similar approach to our equipment, which has been fantastic. And in that, we're taking a holistic approach. So really not looking at an individual piece of software that has its own data integrity items associated with it. We're taking a look holistically across the whole data map. So we've gone and mapped as much data as we have right now, because we are a growing company. We're building a manufacturing facility, so we're constantly updating this information. But we're mapping our data from the beginning of when we initiate some data, following it from different system to different system. Where are there data integrity issues potentially there? Making sure that we've mitigated those types of risks and really taking the full risk-based CSA approach for that and baking it into the process. So by that, we're talking a lot less of documentation, a lot less errors that we've come across on the final product. So we're identifying errors earlier. We're giving ourselves the flexibility to fix those errors with the least burdensome approach, and everything that you just defined on previous slides. We're realizing all of that gain within the last year of having the systems in place. So data integrity specifically, again, taking the holistic approach all the way through the entire process, and making sure that we've dotted our I's, crossed our T's, and continue to update that because it's a life cycle documentation. So it's a GAMP 5 approach, a different way of looking at it. It's still risk-based and truly risk-based, and taking advantage of different levels of risk, different ways of looking at it. but yeah, that's been my experience in baking in data integrity throughout the whole process.
How is your quality organization, I guess, dealing with it? Was there any challenges in the beginning stages of it?
Sure. Yeah, not just for QA, but everybody across the company just understanding what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And by piloting the program and really giving real life examples, we've been learning more and more about what it means for Regenexx Bio to use CSA. So in the time, I think we've had the CSA approach in place for about a year now, and we've already gone through like at least a couple of iterations and revisions to that process. And we continue to have a learning loop and lessons learned on like how we want to do unscripted testing. What does that mean for us? How do we differentiate between the different types of platforms that we have, and how do we adjust that to the different scenarios? We've been all working really well together, and that's been key, is that we're all realizing the value, we're all learning together and having that cross-functional transparency and making sure that at the end of the day, we all have the same goal to make sure that the product is compliant, and not just trying to test for the sake of testing and documenting a test, but actually focusing our efforts to make sure that we are looking at the highest risk items, documenting the highest risk areas, and really targeting our testing.
Great. Thank you for that. And it's very interesting when you mention equipment. I'm just gonna ask some of the other folks on that too, whether they're heading that direction as well, because many folks are also asking, can we apply this to equipment? Can we apply it to SAMD? Again, GAM5 always talked about risk-based approach. The only difference now, we're walking the walk, right? We're not just talking about it. Great. Rachel, thank you, Shayna. Rachel, again, good to see you. It was definitely a pleasure meeting you last year. And the minute I saw you, I knew you're one of us. And you have not even thought about, you kind of asked what was CSA. And we appreciate you now that you're one of our not only friends, teammates, and panelists. So the quick question for you, Rachel, where's your organization? I know you've been going through a transition between Allergan, AbbVie, et cetera. Where's your organization at with CSA?
Thanks, Kellen. Well, first of all, I just want to say hello. It's so great to be here with everybody. It's like a reunion because I really haven't seen you guys, like even just doing like this. So I'm just really excited. So thank you. And
just drinking water, though.
And unfortunately, just drinking water, but maybe one day something different. So I'll speak about what I'm seeing, because at Allergan, when I was at Allergan, we were really a very risk-based approach kind of company. But what CSA has done is it's really the next evolution of what risk-based approach can be, right? It's not a one-size-fits-all. Technology is rapidly changing, and the business, and product, and we got to get products out to the market faster. So we need to think of ways of how we can help the business do that. That's what our objective always has to be. So it was like the perfect time. I just feel like the stars are aligned, that it's the perfect time to introduce CSA, because it's introducing new types of testing that even I was educated when I first met you guys about. Hey, we can really do unscripted testing, exploratory testing. It all makes sense. It's all I think approaches that we all want to adapt, but we just didn't think we could. So hearing folks like Cisco say, no, we can. That's always been the intent, but 15, 20 years ago, technology was very different. It was all new to all of us. So we took that real conservative approach. That's okay. But now I think we have to continue to evolve, because technology is a lot different than it used to be. So where we're, I think, trying to move that needle is really on the testing side, trying to figure out where we really need that scripted testing versus doing that ad hoc exploratory testing, more scenario-based testing. Because sometimes even now with our SDLC, we noticed the way we were writing requirements, it really wasn't getting to those scenarios. Sorry, I have dogs and they're a little excited. So if you hear them, my apologies. That's the wonderful way of working from home. So that's one area that we definitely are beginning to adapt. And I've actually also seen that at AbbVie that they have done that as well. And they've actually taken the approach of Agile too. Some of those new techniques and technologies that we should all be looking into. I know it's overwhelming, but I think we need to take those steps, figure out those systems where it makes sense, and even start adapting those new tools and technologies and automate where possible. So I have been seeing that, which is really, really encouraging. So I guess that's the other area is also just having a risk-based approach and how we assess risk to the next level. We've always assessed all of our requirements, but I think now we're even wanting to assess even more to really look at the patient safety, product quality aspects, making sure the business has a seat at the table and they understand their business process, the mapping, the data, so that we're really focusing on those elements, and that should help drive your risk, your scenario, your testing scenario, so that you know where to focus that scripted testing versus unscripted.
Awesome, awesome. I do have one more question for you. Are you treating data integrity functions any different, or with any additional rigor or different rigor?
So the question was around data integrity?
Yes, functions.
Yeah. So for data integrity for us, CSV has always, I think, always has focused on the data integrity piece, at least where, you know, at Allergan where I worked. I think that where the focus now is, because I know data integrity has been really heightened, and what I'm a little fearful of is I don't want people to go back to the Part 11 remediation days, because I don't think that's what the focus is really about right now. I think the focus is more about the business understanding. I think people thought because you validated, I covered data integrity, and that's one aspect of data integrity. But the business needs to understand their business process, the use of that data, the data elements, and I think those are, you know, where does it make sense where you really need to look at that data, maybe have that extra review and such, and build that into their processes. So I think the focus is more on that business side, so that can then be input into when you're building your systems, which then, you know, you validate and you take your assessment. But I think that's the focus. I think in our industry, we've done very good at the validation because the Part 11 remediation program, I think, again, this is that next evolving. But let's be careful that we're not making it that, oh my God, now this is another Part 11 remediation. I don't think that's what it is.
Thank you. Excellent, excellent point. Thank you so much. Senthil, I don't see Ken. He disappeared. Is he still there? I think he's there somewhere.
Coming back.
Yeah, I think he had some techie problems there.
Maybe he just went for a run. But we'll go with Senthil.
That's true.
So you and Ken from Gilead, you guys, I call you the revolutionaries, right? And therefore CSA Revolution, because you guys definitely broke a lot of barriers within the organization, and you really tried to step out of that, you know, legacy mentality. I'm going to continue to call it legacy because from our perspective, CSVs, we understand what legacy systems are, right? You don't use them anymore. You shelf them, right? So it's a legacy process. Can you share some of the negative experience and challenge while implementing CSA? And again, I know you guys were also early adopters before joining the FICSA team, right? So can you share some of that with us?
No, absolutely. I think I'm going to touch on a couple of things which I think Shauna and Rachel mentioned. I think Shauna mentioned about how it is actually, I mean, when you're working with QA, just not in QA, it's and every other team members needs to be collaboratively involved. And Rachel touched on evolution. I think that is pretty much a very our narrative too. So one thing what really worked well for both Ken and myself is we are on the page from day one, because we both want to see better things, both in the product quality, patient safety, and also data integrity is always foundational to it. So deep in our heart, we want to do that. And the moment we saw this kind of a possibility, I think we just want to hit on. Like, this makes a lot of sense, right? But as part of that, I think Shauna touched on that as well. The same thing, we have to really take the team along, right? Yes, we are great, and you know that the industry is working on this space for quite some time in a very same fashion. We have spoken in many avenues, and most of the questions are pretty similar in the sense we have been doing the risk-based approach all along, 10 years, 15 years, right? We have a GAMP-based approach already. So what is the difference is this going to make, right? I think because people think it's a risk-based approach and they have different stages of or the maturity levels with respect to risk management. But what the CSA gives, the way I want to term it up, is a possibility, right? So there is a possibility. This is definitely going to evolve the way how we approach. And this is more than ever. I think if you think about 10 years ago or 15 years ago when I first started in manufacturing, right, we have a full control over what goes into the production, right, in every step of the way. But it has evolved phenomenally. I mean, it varies from SAMD, or if it is going from equipment or an application, and it depends on the area of work. But you can see the technology has taken over a much larger, and it's a phenomenal difference the way how the technology is used for same product quality, patient safety, and data. The foundation is still the same, right? Deep inside, every technology needs to uphold the patient safety, right? I think that's where we need to bring that narrative. And this CSA, I think, is a possibility. This allows us to untangle our preconceived notions of how we need to do, right? How we need to approach validation, right? Because we need to bring that narrative back. Come on, let's all work towards a product that is a full, that is actually ensuring quality, and use the tools that are available with the new technologies to ensure the quality. Like at the end of the day, health authorities are expecting us to do that, right? They are providing these regulations and laws for what? Patient safety, right? I think that's where we need to keep reminding us. That's the short answer is when we work with the teams, we want to take the team along, right? Socialize this and provide the clarity and what this brings to the table, and why this is important that we need to bring this to the table now, right? It is not something that we need to wait for some time to come. We need to do it now because the technology is already there, right? So we should make use of the technology.
And what I love, Khaled, is that we've got a quality person, which I also have great quality partners as well, saying this, right? So this goes back to that it's so important to have, IT, quality, business, all working together for this common outcome and for this common goal. We all need to do this together, and we need to do it together as an industry. So that's great.
I'm so glad you asked that question. That was my follow-up question for him.
Was it? I'm sorry.
This is awesome. This is great. How did you handle quality? Because we know quality always very conservative about it, specifically when topics around data integrity, right? I want you guys to really focus on the data integrity aspects of it, right? So when you hear CSA, now how are you applying it, right? So how's the reaction there?
So data integrity, I think I don't want that to see it in isolation. It's part of the in future state or in the current state, however the company is organizing themselves, we need to build the quality into the product, and the integrity is the foundation of it. So the data life cycle, it's run through as long as the data is available. And then I think Rachel mentioned about it, it's a data knowledge. So we need to, now the data is transforming into knowledge, right? So how we are deriving the knowledge, that also part of the data integrity point of view. So in future, or maybe whoever is building the product, we need to focus on built-in data integrity controls rather than afterthought. So that's why I think data integrity is not a separate topic. It should be part of the same product quality and patient safety discussion. So for me, that these two are foundations. Data integrity is automatic pillar for that, right? So whether it is a product quality or a patient safety, for me, data integrity is absolutely key. And I'm not going to treat it differently. I'm going to build data integrity controls when we build the product, right? And then apply CSA as part of that. So there is no separate, there is no need of a separate approach for data integrity to me when we all start building the technology.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Absolutely agree. And that's exactly how we're approaching it at Regenix. It's all one and the same. I've been at companies where you have completely different procedures around data integrity and how you address data integrity and how you control and assure that you have data integrity controls and all of that. And if you have separate procedures around it and separate processes, it becomes a separate process. It isn't baked in. So exactly the same as Senthil is talking about is what we do. We don't treat it any differently. We just make sure that it's part of the assessment. Make sure you are looking at the data integrity controls that you need to have in order to assure your data integrity, and doing it holistically across the board, from the beginning of the data all the way through to the end, as well as making sure it's built in from the beginning. And when you get something new on or you change a process, have it part of your change control process, all of that is just completely baked in. And then the CSA process is how you would make sure that everything is assured for compliance.
Got it. So one thing, always comes to mind when you're testing any 21 CFR Part 11 or any data integrity related functions. This becomes already, or right away, it's a high risk. And you need rigorous testing for that specific topic because that's what inspectors do, right? They always want to see audit trail. They want to see when you do that, right? So from a testing approach, by applying CSA to that, right? Where does 21 CFR falls into your risk assessment from the high, and let's focus on CSA, high, medium, low, direct, indirect, patient impact, and product quality. How would you go about that? Where would you assess any data integrity functions? Santo?
All right, sounds good. I was just waiting for the cue. Should I go? Okay. Yeah, so with respect to the data integrity, so I think one thing we need to probably evolve as well is there is a concept of continuing of risk priority. Right? We don't say low, medium, and high, but when you start looking at data integrity controls, depends on where we want to fit it. I just don't want to box it, say low means this is the part, medium means this is the part. Because there are various ways to actually attack the mitigation aspects when we categorize the risk. Right? For example, there are cases, I think we are all using some form of GAMP or modified GAMP-based risk-based approach. Right? When we say high, medium, and low, I would not go say high means per prescriptive way. Right? Rather, what does the high means and what are the existing mitigation we have? And look into the possibilities of risk coming out of that, and then have your assurance defined accordingly. That's why it's perfectly fine to have an unscripted testing or scripted testing. It depends on how you want to do your due diligence. But I think we need to move away from a box view of high so-and-so, medium so-and-so. And also there is another point which I think is probably helpful for everyone. When the team is looking into it, most of the time the team, I think is the current state of affairs, the team is trying to see what I can document first. They're not thinking about the product. They're not thinking about the data integrity control. That thinking is not there. First thinking is, okay, how should I document? Should I have an OQ protocol? I think that is the first frame of mind. I think we need to shift that point of view. Let's focus on what controls we need to put it. What is our risk associated with that? And then we can think about the assurance. So we need to flip it. People think about the documentation first and then think about the product later, right? Or the integrity later, right? I think we need to flip that so that we have the appropriate level of assurances for it.
Definitely a cultural change. Shana?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, related to how we're talking briefly about how I can also relate it to equipment. We are in the process of aligning our commissioning and qualification for equipment with our CSA approach. And by doing so, we're kind of combining GAMP 5 plus CSA approach plus the ISPE baseline guide for commissioning and qualification that came out. And again, getting rid of the high, low, medium and really looking at, is it GXP? Is it non-GXP? Is it direct impact? Is it non-direct impact? And then going down the ladder of risk, like saying at a high level, what are we talking about direct or indirect impact from a GXP perspective? And then diving into the different modules, like if we're talking about Part 11 compliance, that might be a piece of it, but again, it's baked in. It's really the functionality within the system, and then leveraging your vendor qualification, all of the stuff that's already happening as part of your processes to help mitigate a lot of those risks. So if you already have a solid GXP knowledgeable vendor who you have approved through your quality system, and they are providing you with some level of assurance that they are Part 11 compliant, we then accept that in to say, yes, we agree, we have audited you, we're good with your processes. We accept that the solution is Part 11 compliant. Now, that may still mean that we do some exploratory testing or scenario-based to make sure that when we do apply our signature at a very critical part in our process, that it works as we intend it to do. But we're not going to do a step-by-step protocol to make sure every single piece of the Part 11 compliance is in the system. So that's another way that we're baking in those types of data integrity parts and leveraging everything that we're doing as part of our processes that are in place today to make sure we're not reinventing the wheel, that we're not redoing all of the testing every single time that we do a change control too. You know, you implement it, you run all these scripts, then you do a change control, you run all the same scripts. We're getting away from that pattern.
So obviously you're doing it because you want a good quality system, not for the inspectors, right? You're not just providing evidence for the inspector. You want to do it because okay.
Exactly. Yeah, we all have that same goal, like we've all been talking about. Like everybody across the entire company wants a good product, and how are we going to assure that that is compliant and that is a good product? We don't spend our time making documentation and testing things that we could justify that have already been tested and we already have assurance based on other aspects of the business or the vendor themselves.
Ken, welcome back. Glad to see you.
We missed you,
Yes.
Ken.
So what do you think, Ken?
Is this how you get me to shut up? You disconnect me and take down my my broadband at home?
Pretty much similar to what I did to you in Vegas.
Yeah, all good, all good.
So tell us,
We
what's
thought
your
maybe
thought?
you went out and did a Spartan race and now you're back, Ken.
You came back, got a medal behind me.
Yeah.
What was your question, Colin?
So tell us a little bit about data integrity functions. How would you approach Central and tell him, I am not doing this, I am not testing this. How are you going to get away with it? How do you apply the CSA concept to any of your data integrity?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you look at data integrity as a whole, though, I mean, just it's no different than any other requirement, and it's not an issue of getting away with anything or escaping it. You know, it's a framework, it's a model. Right? You build your models, and whatever happens based on the model is a result of what you do. It's no different than any other requirement. And then it gets into what Shana was just alluding to, right? That, you know, if you've done your vendor, your basic assurance at the vendor. We start looking at a lot of things like core functionality, like audit trail. It's been tested to the nth degree. Do you really need a screenshot of an ESIG? How many times do you need to do that?
Yeah.
So it starts, you know, it's a layered approach. I mean, if you look at CSA, it's fundamental, right? GAMP gives you risk-based testing, right? The level of rigor proportional to risk. What CSA does overlays the concept of risk-based documentation. So then you start sitting there and you look at this based on the requirements, based on the impact of patient safety, based on the product quality and data integrity, you start grading what level of documentation you're going to do. And then the intent is to focus on the actual testing of the system, ensuring that the system actually works, instead of just the ritual, which is a collection of the screenshots, right? And just think about it. Why I say the ritual is because we dry run. You know, your protocols are typically dry run to the nth degree until they have no value, right? The whole purpose of a test script is to find defects, but we would rather dry run it till it finds no defects. We care more about the ritual of having a clean execution than actually spending that same amount of time on actually ensuring that the system is better, right? So roundabout answer, but the model will drive it, and the model is based on, you know, how you define it within your org. And the key thing in here, we're in a space where you could take that same system and you can currently, outside of CSA, I can accept all the vendor testing, I can risk assess the whole package away, to the point where I can create 20 volumes of documentation. You're in a space where you can be compliant on either end as long as you justify it, right? So that was always been the case. You go to a SaaS, it's like, I just did a UAT, I'm going to sign off, I'm not going to do any of that. You're a smaller company, you typically do risk. Those are both compliant. The question here is, what is the level of rigor that you need for your organization?
No, that's a great point, Ken. And then also, I think it also applies to data migration as well. When you're doing migration, the data integrity of that, and we actually we did a migration for a GXP system, and one of the things that we did was take advantage of all the prototyping or all of those phased runs that they did of that data. Right, not waiting to the end. We took advantage of all those reviews that were happening throughout the process, and having a memo at the end that said these were the things, this was what worked well, and these were the things that we need to that fell out. And then we show another run that shows that the business looked at that, and then that data was clean, and you just keep going into the end till you're ready to now run that in a formal environment, and then you might do more of an end-to-end test to make sure that that data works okay with that system. But we didn't want to have to do all this sampling like we used to do. So it was a very new way and unscripted way of doing testing from a data migration perspective, which saved us a lot of time in terms of documentation and GDP and screenshots and all those kinds of things. And we actually got to a better place with a migration that had less defects by the time we were ready to go when we went to production. So we did it for data migration as well. We applied it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. When you look at it, one of the key things that's in the Good Practice Guide in the appendix, it talks about the whole intent of this is actually to find defects.
Yes.
And it's just like it even goes so far as to say that don't look for good documentation practices. Right? If you're going to leverage the other side, the question is, was the right testing performed? As opposed to, hey, did I get the screenshot? Was it labeled? Was it, at that right moment? When you're looking at it, it was the real question comes out, was the right testing performed? As opposed to this whole nuance, because when we go down that path, then we focus on the ritual. We focus on the screenshot. We focus on the dry runs. We focus on everything that takes us away from the primary, which is ensuring that system works. And yep. Insofar as what Rachel was alluding to, all of that earlier testing, right? You can actually generate the screenshots in advance, right there, and then fill out the paperwork later if you're doing exploratory testing and you're looking at it and you're trying to create a baseline. That timing is, the question is, was it documented properly, or are we saying that the system actually doesn't work? We're so fascinated with the documentation that we miss it. Insofar as industry as a whole has put us down this rabbit hole, because every time we have an issue, we automatically say validation equals testing. Validation is always defined by GAMP as the full life cycle. As Rachel was talking, that dev testing, that all that stuff that was being done to get the migration, that's all part of the life cycle.
Yeah, it's all part of the process. We have done
historically, we said, the case, nothing didn't work. I'll throw more testing. I'll do this. Hey, this tool, it didn't work out. It's not that I didn't fix the engineering controls on that tool. Also thought, oh no, now I need to, even though there's no predicate record, I'm not going to validate that tool. Which explicitly, if you go, listen, these ancillary tools don't need to that level. There are no predicate rules on it. You just need to make sure they work. And you need to look at the life cycle perspective, as opposed to just thinking everything is just a test case, and that's every corrective action, test case, test case, test case.
So that's very interesting. We just got a question. It's basically, will CSA lead to more software bugs and defects being discovered through end user usage rather than getting caught doing developer testing and product validation?
I'll take that on. I mean, I'm opinionated. Ken
is back.
Well, no.
Sorry, guys, you can go if you want now. Ken is here.
The purpose of all testing is to find defects. That is the true purpose of testing. It is defect detection. Right? You don't test in quality, the number of latent defects, and so the amount you don't build quality by testing it in. Right? It's there. You detect the defects. It is all about risk awareness and making those decisions. So CSA gives you the time to actually test more. What is a valve protocol? You write it. It assumes a uniform distribution of defects almost because it never adjusts. You execute it in the same way, the same fashion, consistently, repeatedly, which means after that first execution, and it finds all defects, its value from a testing, from a defect removal, is zero. Right? It's not going to find anything else. Whereas you do exploratory testing, you start testing the system, I find a bunch of defects. Oh, hey, let me explore this. Exploratory testing has the ability to dynamically adjust as you test. And if you look at the way validation is done versus modern testing, when you're looking at AI, when you're looking at automation, we are so far behind the times as far as testing is.
100%.
So CSA is opening the door to allow us to take credit for that work, such that we can modernize our approaches, such that we can include automation, such as Shana was talking about, leveraging the vendor. All of these things are going to increase the number of defects we're going to find.
And I think, Ken, the door was always open. I just think this is clarifying that it's allowed to do, because again, nothing has changed in terms of the regulation. Yep. It's just more that trying to it's opening everybody's eyes to more ways of doing things. And again, we talked about, Ken, when you're gone, that this is really a revolution. It's a time where it's an evolution that we all get to grow as this professional, the tools, techniques. That's actually really exciting.
Absolutely, absolutely. One more question, which is really a common one, and I think everyone should hear your thoughts about it because you all dealt with CSA. How have you dealt with individuals in the company that are resistant to adopting CSA principle? As a quality group, we are encouraging more CSA principles, but our IT and operations group are hesitant to adopt these processes. Anybody?
Well, that's opposite. So they're saying IT is hesitant.
Which is interesting. Yeah. Thank you, quality. Whoever that is, good for you.
I can give a color to that. I think there's a possibility of why. So I think if you think about who is actually going to defend these inspections or audits, that is always placed in the minds of the individuals who are driving these technologies, right? And also with respect to the how well the management is supporting. With respect to, I've seen cases where there are resistance in the IT teams as well, with respect to adopting CSA. It is probably because of the way how it is set up, right? It needs to be a collaborative discussion with quality and IT and probably other engineering and validation teams as well, just to have a discussion on what is the best way to defend audits or inspections, because that's how they are trained so far. In your current state, if someone is walking into the door, who is going before them? Right. So most of the time, technical teams are going before them and then sharing their views. In some organizations, quality is taking the lead. Some organizations, quality is not taking the lead.
Yeah.
Right. So it depends on the organization's dynamics, and also, as I said, take the team along with respect to what is expected and how we can position your defense. Because at the end of the day, there's a conversation on whether are we in compliance with or not. Right. So with respect to product quality, patient safety, and data integrity, if you're able to show that, so albeit. So the due diligence is up to the company.
Well, I know we transitioned directly from our panel here directly to questions, but when I'm seeing these questions, those are really interesting, and I really want our audience to get their answers. One more coming up here. So one more just comment on your Senthil. Here's how I think about it to that previous questions. Job security. I think that's the fear sometimes. If we do less, we're not going to need more people. Well, guess what? For whoever is thinking that way, no, you're going to have more work coming your way. You know why? Because you're going to do more automation. You're going to implement more systems. And guess what? You're going to do it with a lot less documentation and just focus on innovation. That's really the mentality that we all should.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it goes back to it's a different. It's not that your role is diminished. It's actually different, and
exactly.
And there's growth opportunity, and learning new tools, like I was saying before, learning new ways of getting to do automation, working more with your business to drive getting products to market faster. So it's just a shift. I don't think that it means less. It's actually a shift and a good shift.
Exactly.
That's a great point.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just to add on to that, I think just to be kind to the people who are resistant, I think that the absence of this document, like the Good Practice Guide inclusion and bringing CSA concepts into print, was keeping people are hesitant, especially in our industry, to be an early adopter. So therefore, they were waiting. Now that this document has come out, GAMP has embraced it, what CSA has been talking about. It went through multiple rounds of review from industry experts, regulators. It went through the whole committees and everything. And now people should be more open And the partnership, Senthil is my QA. The partnership is there. I work with other QA units who I knew weren't ready. I couldn't bring a concept that wasn't in print to them and say like, hey, come do this. But now that this is here, I really do think, get it, read it, understand what it says, and start thinking about all the different points that it makes, because there's a whole section that's almost philosophical in there that kind of brings up how we got here, where we should be. So
no, you're right, Ken. It's like a great discussion starter. Like that's the hope, that people would feel more comfortable, because it is a change. But I think also it's an industry. That's what's also great, is that there's so many different companies coming together to see this shift. So really nobody has to be in it alone as well. So I also feel anybody who's on the panel, I mean, you have our names, please reach out. LinkedIn, actually, when I've spoken at other panels, I've gotten people to reach out to me from LinkedIn, and I think we should do that as an industry. And more you're hearing that. I think COVID has done that as well. We have to work together to kind of help make this happen.
I have a good question for you guys. I'm seeing a lot of questions, and for my audience, please forgive us. We're not going to be able to answer all of them. However, as I scan through them, a lot of them can be answered by listening to other webinars and seeing other presentations that we put together in season 1. So go back to season 1. It's going to be on Netflix, by the way, soon. Just kidding about this one. But here's a good question. How comfortable would any of you be if the technology vendors employed CSA? I think that's a very good question.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think it really depends on the type of software, right? The vendor themselves cannot assess the risk on how their clients are going to use the system. So that's still going to be an area where the client is going to have to assess that risk for their intended use. But there's still opportunity to bake that directly, to bake the CSA approach directly into your software development lifecycle, and really utilize the great practices of an SDLC with a risk-based approach to think outside the box of how you're documenting the testing of your out-of-box solution, for example. So from my perspective, I have vendors who do not provide me with your stereotypical IQ, OQ for the out-of-box product. They are providing me with assurance through their SDLC. They have different ways of showing me assurance that their product is compliant with what they're actually going to be providing to me. So that transparency between the vendor and the client is very helpful. And again, like we've all been talking about, you have to, as much as within my company and within everybody else's company, we have to bring everybody along with us through these processes. The vendor themselves also need to bring their clients along with them. So again, that transparency, the documentation, and from an audit perspective, being allowed to see how the SDLC process is providing the level of insurance is absolutely a great way to implement that within a vendor.
So I came from a e-clinical vendor, that did IWRs, ePros, EDC, and all of that. So you would want them. I mean, think about what CSA is saying. It's the application opens the door to application of modern testing. You would want it. You already do it. Every time you use Microsoft, you use Oracle. You're already opening yourself up to people who are already applying. Because see, what is CSA? CSA is just saying like, hey, our rituals of documentation are preventing us from actually testing the system robustly. Where are we opening the doors to? Automation. What are the vendors already doing? Automation. You would want a vendor who actually embraces it. And during an audit, during inspection, a lot of times, when you're on the vendor side, they say, okay, show me where this is testing. And then the times where we just pulled it out of the audit trail and say like, hey, we covered that case. Right? We didn't capture screenshots for that, but we were able to show that, yes, we covered it. So I definitely would want. Now, there is a layer that you got to do for, as Shane was alluding to, for your inspection, to make sure that your service is so you understand validation as a whole, and CSA has a gradation built into it in doing it. So it's just the application, but you'd always want someone who understands modern testing.
Team, I know we were approaching here the end of time, but would you be willing to come back and finish this conversation here because I'm seeing a lot of good questions and I really want them answered. And I need that discussion to continue. Can you
absolutely.
do that? Raise your hand if you're willing to join again.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. This is a great group. And here's the cool thing about it, that you guys are all in the pharma, biotech. I know you're kind of half and half. Rachel, you're coming into some medical device section here, but from an FD perspective. But it's really interesting how, the folks that coming from the pharma side, use CSA for crying out loud, do it, right? Yeah. And it started all back in CDRH. And we've been struggling for the past 4.5 years to convince the FDA, yes, we can do it, we can do this. So finally, the FDA is opening that door for us, right? To innovate. I really want to get out of it is digitize your current paper process. Leverage CSA to help you get there, right? I just want to thank you.
It's actually a stepping stone, Caleb, to our digital transformation. This is our digital transformation.
Yes.
That's how I see it.
All right. Sounds good.
Pick on each other enough.
I know. Next time we'll do that. Over a break.
Kick me off the line.
We're going to have to do that next time.
Yeah, this guy lost his internet for well, supposedly he did. So now one announcement, beside the fact that I'm going to bring this gangs again together, hopefully before the end of the year. Just something coming up in January. It's a surprise for two FDA speakers from CEDAR and CDRH, okay? And they will be talking about the data integrity challenges with the current technology, right? So be prepared for this. It's coming up almost the second week of January. I will not announce who it is. It's a surprise. And we will have also some of the FICSA team and friends on that panel. We're going to have a really nice panel and a very strong panel. And we're really shooting for 1.5 hours to probably 2 hours worth of a session. So be prepared for that. I want to thank you guys so much, my gangsters, my team, and I can't wait till we meet sometime soon after COVID. Please all stay safe. And I appreciate you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Caleb.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care.